this incident happened to a friend of mine. I will narrate on her behalf. It's 7 o'clock in the evening. A friend called and persuaded me to come visit her. It was a snowy winter that year. The air temperature that evening was minus 10 degrees. The sky was overcast and it was snowing fine. We had to go to the village, since I went there for the first time. I turned on the navigator so as not to pass the turn. I drove along the highway to the turn indicated by the navigator quickly and without problems, turning onto a barely visible road and driving along it for about 500 meters. She sat down in the snow, neither there nor here. I got out of the car, took out a shovel, and began to dig out. It was already snowing in fairly large flakes, but visibility was still good. After suffering for half an hour, during which my hands turned to ice, as always, I left my gloves at home. I realized that I would not leave myself. After getting into the car, I called my friend and described the situation. She said that I took the wrong turn, not reaching the right turn. Just a little bit. She calmed me down by saying that she would drive up in 40 minutes and pull me out. Turning on the music on the phone and getting comfortable, I was going to wait for her. About 15 minutes later, the windshield was illuminated by headlights from where I was driving and where the road was no longer visible. A car, a Range Rover, appeared out of the darkness through a veil of snow. She stopped, about 2 meters short of me. The door opened and a man got out. He was wearing a sweater and jeans. He came up and knocked on the window on my side. I rolled down the window a little bit and he asked, "Are you sitting? Do you need help?" "I'm sitting." "Of course you need it," I answered him. "Is there a cable?" Asked the next question. "There is, in the trunk." And with these words, she opened the door and got out of the car. After driving around my poor guy, he attached a cable and telling me to get into the car, pulled her out of the snow captivity, and, having reached the highway, only then stopped. We got out of our cars at the same time. By this time, the snow had stopped falling. He unhooked the cable and rolled it up and put it in my trunk. Thanking the man, she asked, "How much do I have to pay for the help?" He looked at me, replied that thank you was enough, and getting into the car, turned around and for some reason drove back to where he was coming from. Why do I say for some reason? I just got the impression when I saw him coming that he was moving towards the highway. But even that didn't surprise me much. How shocked I was by what happened next. After driving 300 meters away from the highway, he disappeared with his car. Disappeared as if he had never existed. I stood and watched, not understanding anything and refusing to believe in what had happened. If I hadn't been on the highway at that time and hadn't seen the tire tracks on that road, I would have thought I was dreaming all this. Stunned, she got into the car. A few minutes later, a friend drove up, who, running up to my car and sitting next to me, exclaimed, "I'm in a hurry to save her. Pull her out of the snow." He even grabbed a cable just in case. I usually always forget to put it in the trunk, and she's sitting quietly in the car on the highway. Is this a joke, or did you want me to meet you? I told her what had happened to me. She looked at me incredulously. Then I suggested that she walk a little along the road that she turned off due to a navigator error. We both got out of the car and walked along that road a little ahead. The tread marks of my car were clearly visible in the snow. There were no tracks from his car, but the fact that there were traces of mine confirmed my words. Having arrived at her place, having warmed up, sitting on the couch, we told her husband what had happened to me. It's strange. No one has been driving along that road for a long time, as it leads to an abandoned village. The houses there are almost all destroyed. They used to drive through it to us, but then they paved this road. Are you saying that after driving a little away from the highway? He's saying that after driving a little away from the highway, he disappeared. All the more amazing. You'd think it was a phantom, but you saw the car and the driver up close. He pulled your car out of the snow and even dragged it to the highway. I don't understand anything, he said in surprise. Can you imagine how shocked I was when the car disappeared in front of my eyes? She drove, and disappeared. I told him, until now, no, yes, I will remember that case. And I ask myself again, where did he come from? Where were you going? Where are you going? Where did he disappear to? How could this be? After all, this is not real. She finished her story and looked at me. What do you think about this? What could I say to her? If I hadn't known that she would never make up something that didn't happen, I would probably have asked if she hadn't made it up. So, one day, I was taking a girl from the city to the village to visit her grandmother, who was not feeling well. The long road forced us to stop 30 km from the city. Since there was a highway, and the girl was shy, she decided to go into the woods. The next half hour was just grim. I was waiting for her in the car. 8 minutes passed and I got worried. Went after her, but the girl is nowhere to be found. Jitters rolled through my legs and arms. In convulsions, he took a mobile phone and began calling her. 13 minutes have passed between the events. As a result, during this time, I managed to go far into the forest because I was running and looking for her. As a result, after 10 minutes, I suddenly received several messages that such and such a subscriber called you. Then, there is an incoming call from a girl. She was the first to say, they say if she met a friend, she could call him into the car and not go into the woods to chat. I told her that I was alone and had been looking for you for half an hour. She said that she was waiting for me for an hour and saw me go into the woods with some guy who still put a friendly hand on my shoulder. In general, I can't comment on this story anymore. But I learned from friends that devilry often happens on this road. 3 months later, on the 19th, a man went missing almost at the same place, leaving the car running. Two or 3 years ago, I had a chance to drive along a country road late at night. I was returning home. I was late. I'm driving. There are no cars. In general, I'm alone, maybe 5 kilometers to the highway. I see a village in a lowland in the fog and a bus stop standing in the way. And when I was already level with the bus stop, I clearly saw how I literally bumped into a girl. A long-haired blonde, as if she had drawn herself out of the ground. Naturally, like all decent women, I closed my eyes. Well, I slowed down. I was afraid that I had touched her because she was kind of on the side. There was no noticeable impact, no sounds. But I stopped anyway, got out of the car and went to look. But there was no one. Not from behind, not from the front, not from the side, nowhere. To say that I thought and imagined then is to say nothing. Starting from the setup and mysticism and ending with the madness of my own brain, which nevertheless turned on belatedly. But I ran behind the wheel, blocked the doors, and left with cold hands and teeth beating off high vibrations. Literally driving out of the foggy valley, cars immediately got in the way, and somehow it became calmer. After a while, my friend tells almost a similar story. She also returned by car late at night. The children, too, were sleeping in the back, and she saw a bright girl on the highway. But almost head-on, as she passed through the car, there was no impact. She stopped too, but did not get out, but looked into the rear and side mirrors and saw an elderly woman, an old woman, who stood and looked after her. Well, She left in a terrible fright, too.